I was watching the fuel gauge on my backup generator when I heard the unmistakable sound of heels clicking across my driveway like an executioner approaching the condemned. It was 3 p.m. on a Tuesday in Thornridge, Colorado, and I had just finished filling my generator's external fuel tank when Brenda Patterson, the HOA president, appeared at my property line with that look on her face. You know the one. The look that says she's about to make your life miserable because she's found something in the bylaws that gives her a microscopic amount of power over your existence. "Excuse me, Aaron," she called out, her voice dripping with fake politeness. "You have a permit for that." I straightened up from where I'd been checking the fuel levels and wiped my hands on a rag. "A permit for what, Brenda?" She gestured dramatically at my 500-gallon diesel tank like it was a nuclear warhead. "That monstrosity, and all that fuel, do you have any idea how dangerous that is?" "I'm quite certain it violates our community safety regulations." My generator setup wasn't exactly new. I'd installed it 3 years ago after a particularly brutal winter storm knocked out power for 5 days. My wife Sarah had been 8 months pregnant at the time, and I'd sworn never to be caught unprepared again. The whole system was professional grade, installed by licensed contractors, and inspected by the county. Everything was above board. "I have every permit required by Thornridge County," I said, keeping my voice level. "The generator was installed in 2022, inspected annually, and meets all safety codes. You were president when I installed it, Brenda. We went through this already." Her lips pressed into a thin line. "Well, we're conducting a community safety review. Things change, Aaron. Regulations update. And frankly, several neighbors have expressed concerns about the fire hazard." "Which neighbors?" "I'm not at liberty to disclose that information. But I'll be bringing this before the board at our meeting next week. In the meantime, I strongly suggest you drain that fuel tank. It's a liability." I felt my jaw clench. "I'm not draining anything. That fuel is for emergency backup power. We're in tornado season, Brenda." "Or have you forgotten what happened 2 years ago when that EF2 tore through Bennett? Don't you dare lecture me about safety," she snapped, her fake politeness evaporating. "I've been on this board for 6 years. I know what's safe and what isn't. And storing 500 gallons of diesel fuel in a residential neighborhood is reckless. It's in an approved container with secondary containment more than 50 feet from my house and behind a fire-rated barrier. The fire marshal signed off on it personally." She pulled out her phone and took several photos of my setup. "We'll see what the board has to say about that. And Aaron, if you refuse to comply with a board order, we can place a lien on your property. Just something to think about." She turned on her heel and marched back toward her pristine white SUV. I watched her go, feeling that familiar mixture of anger and disbelief that comes from dealing with petty bureaucrats who mistake a neighborhood board position for actual authority. My neighbor, Rick Morales, wandered over once Brenda had driven off. He was retired military, late 50s, and had even less patience for HOA nonsense than I did. "Let me guess," he said. "She's got a problem with your generator. Apparently it's a safety hazard now. Never mind that it's been sitting here for 3 years without incident." Rick shook his head. "You know what this is really about, right? Her nephew owns that solar installation company. She's been pushing everyone to switch to solar with battery backup. Probably gets a kickback." I hadn't considered that angle, but it made sense. Brenda had been evangelizing about solar at every board meeting for the past year. Several homeowners had already caved and installed systems through her nephew's company. "Well, she can push all she wants. I'm keeping my setup. It works, it's legal, and it's none of her business." "You might want to get ahead of this," Rick said, Pull your permits, get a letter from the fire marshal, maybe even consult with a lawyer. You know how she is. She'll twist things at the board meeting to make you look like you're endangering the whole neighborhood. He was right, of course. I spent the rest of the afternoon gathering documentation. My original permits from 2022, the annual inspection reports, photos of the installation showing all the safety features, even the manufacturer's safety certifications for the fuel tank. I also called the fire marshal's office and requested a written statement confirming that my installation met current codes. That evening, I explained the situation to my wife Sarah over dinner. Our daughter Emma, now 3 years old, was more interested in building towers with her mashed potatoes than the conversation, but Sarah listened with growing concern. "Can she actually force you to remove it?" Sarah asked. "Not legally, no, but she can make things difficult. File complaints, call for inspections, drag us through hearings. It's harassment basically, but it's within her power as HOA president." "That's insane. We need that generator. What if there's another storm like when I was pregnant? What about Emma's medication?" Emma had a mild form of asthma that required a nebulizer, which needed electricity. "I know. Don't worry, I'm not backing down, but this might get ugly." The board meeting was scheduled for the following Tuesday at 7 p.m. in the community center. I showed up 15 minutes early with a folder full of documentation and a laptop with photos and inspection reports. About 30 residents were already there, which was unusual. Typical board meetings drew maybe a dozen people, mostly retirees with nothing better to do. Brenda sat at the head table with the other 4 board members. Tom Hendricks, the vice president who generally just agreed with whatever Brenda said. Linda Martinez, the treasurer who actually seemed reasonable. Paul Chen, the secretary who rarely spoke. And Janet Wheeler, a member at large who I didn't know well. The meeting started with the usual administrative business. Minutes from the last meeting, financial reports, a discussion about repainting the community center. Then Brenda cleared her throat and pulled out her notes. Item 7 on our agenda tonight, community safety concerns regarding hazardous fuel storage at 2847 Meadowbrook Drive. That's the property of Aaron Young. She looked directly at me. "Aaron is here tonight, and I hope he'll explain to the board and the community why he believes it's appropriate to store 500 gallons of diesel fuel in our neighborhood." I raised my hand. "I'd be happy to address that. But first, can you tell me what specific HOA regulation I'm violating?" Brenda shuffled through her papers. Section 12, subsection 4 of our bylaws states that no homeowner shall maintain any structure or storage that poses a fire hazard or safety risk to the community. "That's pretty vague," I said. "By that logic, propane grills and gas-powered lawn mowers would be violations. What makes my generator fuel different? The quantity," she said sharply. "No reasonable person needs 500 gallons of fuel. Actually, that's exactly what a reasonable person needs for extended emergency backup power. That tank gives me approximately 2 weeks of runtime at moderate load. During a natural disaster, that could be the difference between life and death." Tom Hendricks leaned forward. "But don't you think that much fuel is dangerous? What if there's a fire?" "Diesel fuel is significantly less flammable than gasoline," I explained. "It requires compression to ignite, which is why diesel engines work the way they do. You can't light diesel with a match. Plus, my tank has double wall construction, secondary containment, automatic shutoff valves, and it's positioned with fire-rated barriers on all sides. Here are the inspection reports." I held up the folder. Linda Martinez spoke up. "Have these inspections been done by certified professionals?" "Yes. The fire marshal's office inspects it annually. I just got a written statement from Fire Marshal Davis confirming that the installation meets all current safety codes. I have copies for everyone." I stood and distributed the letter. Several board members read it carefully. Brenda's expression grew more pinched with each passing second. "This doesn't address the fundamental issue," she insisted. "The fire marshal may have signed off on the technical specifications, but that doesn't mean it's appropriate for a residential neighborhood. We have aesthetic standards, property value concerns, and community well-being to consider." "Where was it installed again?" Linda asked. "Behind my house, inside a fenced enclosure. You can't see it from the street or from any neighboring property. It doesn't affect aesthetics or property values." "But everyone knows it's there," Brenda said, "and it makes people uncomfortable. We've received complaints." "From who?" I asked again. "That's confidential." "If people are making accusations that affect my property rights, I have a right to know who they are and what specifically they're claiming." Paul Chen, the secretary, finally spoke. "Actually, Aaron has a point. Anonymous complaints shouldn't be the basis for forcing a homeowner to remove a legally installed, properly permitted structure." Brenda shot him a look that could have curdled milk. "Are you questioning my judgment, Paul? I'm questioning the process. If we start forcing people to remove things based on vague safety concerns and anonymous complaints, where does it end?" A woman I didn't recognize stood up from the audience. "I live on Meadowbrook Drive, 3 houses down from Aaron. I've never felt unsafe because of his generator. In fact, during that ice storm last January, he ran an extension cord to my house so I could keep my refrigerator and heater running. I think this whole thing is ridiculous." Several other residents murmured agreement. Brenda looked flustered. "That's very touching," she said, her voice tight. "But individual anecdotes don't change the board's responsibility to the community as a whole. We need to consider worst-case scenarios." "Then consider this worst-case scenario," I said. "Another tornado touches down near Thornridge. Power goes out for days. People need somewhere to charge phones, store medication, access news and emergency information. My generator has helped neighbors during every power outage for the past 3 years. What's your plan for the next emergency, Brenda?" "That's not the HOA's responsibility. People should have their own backup plans." "Like backup generators," the audience laughed. Even Tom Hendricks cracked a smile. Brenda's face flushed red. "This isn't a joke, Aaron. I'm bringing this to a vote. The board needs to decide whether your fuel storage violates community standards." "You can vote on whatever you want," I said, "but you can't override county regulations and fire marshal approvals. If you try to force me to remove a legally permitted structure, I'll see you in court." The room went silent. You didn't usually hear threats of litigation at HOA meetings in Thornridge, but I wasn't bluffing. I'd already spoken with a property rights attorney that afternoon, and he'd assured me that the HOA had no legal grounds to force removal of my generator system. Linda Martinez raised her hand. "I move to table this issue until we can get a legal opinion from the HOA's attorney. We need to understand what authority we actually have before we vote on anything." "I second that," Paul Chen said immediately. Brenda looked like she wanted to argue, but 3 other board members were already nodding. "Fine," she said through gritted teeth. "We'll table this for now. But this isn't over, Aaron." I gathered my papers and left the meeting feeling like I'd won a battle but not the war. Brenda wasn't the type to let things go. She'd find another angle, another argument, another way to make my life difficult. I was right. Over the next 2 weeks, I received 3 separate violation notices from the HOA. The first claimed my grass was half an inch too long. The second said my mailbox needed repainting. The third stated that my trash cans were visible from the street on a non-collection day, which violated aesthetic guidelines. None of it was true. My lawn was immaculate because I just mowed it. My mailbox had been repainted 6 months ago. And my trash cans were in my garage, where they always were except on collection days. I took photos documenting everything and sent certified letters to the HOA disputing each violation. But the harassment was clearly deliberate. Brenda was trying to bury me in paperwork and violations, hoping I'd either give up or make a mistake that would give her leverage. Then things got serious. On a Thursday morning in early May, I came home from work to find 2 men in County Environmental Services uniforms inspecting my generator and fuel tank. I parked quickly and walked over. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" The older of the 2 men, a guy in his 50s with a clipboard, looked up. "Are you the property owner?" "I am." "Aaron Young, what's this about?" "We received a complaint about possible fuel contamination. Someone reported seeing diesel leaking from this tank. We're here to investigate." I felt my stomach drop. "There's no leak. I check this system every week." "Everything's secure. Do you have records of your inspections?" "Yes, I keep a maintenance log. It's inside. Let me get it." I retrieved the log and returned to find both men examining the tank carefully. The younger one was running some kind of electronic detector around the base, while his partner inspected the fittings and valves. "I don't see any evidence of leakage," the younger man said. "Sensors aren't detecting any vapor escape or ground contamination." "The tank looks well maintained," the older man agreed. He flipped through my maintenance log. "You're documenting everything properly. Annual inspections by the fire marshal, quarterly checks by yourself, all the right boxes checked." "So what happens now?" I asked. "We file a report stating that we found no violations. The complaint will be marked as unfounded." He handed me a form. "Just sign here acknowledging that we conducted the inspection." After they left, I sat on my back porch and tried to calm down. A false report to Environmental Services was a serious escalation. If they had found something wrong, even something minor, I could have faced fines or been forced to remove the entire system. And there was no doubt in my mind who had filed the complaint. I called my attorney, Marcus Green, and explained what had happened. "She's playing hardball," Marcus said. "Filing false reports with county agencies is harassment. It might even be illegal, depending on what she told them. Can you find out exactly what was reported?" "I can file a public records request for the complaint." "Do that. And start documenting every interaction with Brenda and the HOA. Keep copies of everything. If this continues, we might need to pursue a restraining order or file a harassment suit." "This is insane. All this over a generator." "It's not really about the generator," Marcus said. "It's about control. She's used to getting her way and you challenged her authority. Now it's personal." The public records request took a week to process. When I finally got the complaint report, my hands shook as I read it. The complaint, filed anonymously but traced to an HOA email address, claimed that diesel fuel was leaking into the ground, creating an environmental hazard and potentially contaminating groundwater. It described my installation as unsafe and unsecured, neither of which was remotely true. I forwarded everything to Marcus. "This is defamation and filing a false report," he said. "We can work with this, but let's give her one chance to back off before we escalate. I'll send a cease and desist letter." The letter went out the next day, formally demanding that Brenda and the HOA stop harassing me, withdraw all false violation notices, and refrain from filing any further false reports with government agencies. It laid out the evidence of harassment and noted that continued actions would result in legal action. Brenda's response came not to me, but to the entire neighborhood. She sent out a community-wide email about certain residents who threaten legal action against volunteers who are simply trying to keep our community safe. She didn't name me specifically, but everyone knew who she meant. The email painted me as unreasonable and aggressive, someone who valued personal convenience over neighborhood well-being. It was a masterclass in manipulation. Several neighbors who'd been friendly suddenly seemed distant. A few people I didn't know well gave me suspicious looks when I was out walking Emma. The court of public opinion was turning against me. Facts be damned. Then I got the phone call that changed everything. It was a Friday evening around 6 p.m. I was grilling burgers in the backyard while Sarah played with Emma on the swing set. My phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. "Is this Aaron Young?" A man's voice, official sounding, speaking. "This is James Kowalski with Thornridge Emergency Management. I'm calling about your backup generator system." My heart sank. Had Brenda gotten to them too? "Okay," I said carefully. "What about it?" "We're updating our emergency preparedness database and noticed something interesting. According to our records, your property address is listed as the power source for the tornado warning sirens for your section of Thornridge. Is that correct?" I blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" "The emergency warning sirens. The ones that alert residents to take shelter during severe weather. Our records show that the sirens for the Meadowbrook subdivision are powered by a backup system located at your address." I set down my spatula, my mind racing. "I don't understand. Why would the sirens be connected to my generator? That's what I'm trying to figure out. I just started this position 3 months ago and I'm reviewing all our emergency systems. The documentation is unclear, but there's definitely a power connection between your property and the siren system. I was hoping you could explain it." "Hold on. Let me think." I walked away from the grill, trying to remember the installation process from 3 years ago. The contractor had run a lot of conduit, much more than seemed necessary for just my house. I'd asked about it at the time, and he'd said something about future expansion capability and being ready for whole home backup. When my generator was installed in 2022, the contractor mentioned something about additional capacity, but I don't remember specifics. Who was the contractor? Let me check the file. Here it is. Reliability Power Systems owned by Doug Patterson, as in Brenda Patterson's ex-husband. "Oh my God," I said. "What?" "Doug Patterson is my HOA president's ex-husband. They divorced about 2 years ago. He installed my generator system about a year before that." Interesting. According to these records, the emergency siren system was upgraded right around the same time your generator was installed. The sirens used to run on battery backup, but those batteries were failing. The upgrade connected them to a more reliable power source. It looks like your generator. So when the power goes out, my generator powers the tornado sirens for this whole subdivision. That's what it looks like, yes. The sirens have their own circuit, separate from your house. But they draw from your generator's output. You might not have even noticed because the draw is minimal, maybe 200 watts per siren, and there are only 3 sirens in your subdivision. I sat down on my back porch steps. This was unbelievable. Does the HOA know about this? I assume so. The records show that the upgrade was done through a city contract, but the HOA coordinated it. There should have been board approval and everything. Can you send me copies of all that documentation? Sure, I'll email it over, but Mr. Young, there's a reason I'm calling. We need to make sure this arrangement continues. Those sirens are critical infrastructure, If something happens to your generator, we need to know immediately so we can implement backup plans. The generator is fine, properly maintained, inspected regularly. That's good. But I'm going to need to send someone out to verify the connection and make sure everything is up to code. Would next week work? Absolutely. Anytime. After I hung up, I just sat there for a moment processing. Then I started laughing. Sarah came over concerned. What's so funny? Brenda has been trying to force me to remove my generator, I said. But if I remove it, the tornado sirens for the entire subdivision stop working. She's been fighting to eliminate the very thing that keeps her precious community safe. You're kidding. Nope. Emergency management just told me. My generator powers the warning sirens. Has been for 3 years. Does Brenda know? That's the question, isn't it? The documentation arrived in my email an hour later. I spent the evening reading through every page. The picture became clear pretty quickly. In 2022, the city had budgeted for emergency siren upgrades across Thornridge. Each subdivision was responsible for coordinating the installation in their area. The Meadowbrook HOA board, with Brenda as president, had approved a plan to connect the sirens to a reliable backup power source. Doug Patterson, still married to Brenda at the time, had proposed a solution. He would install a large backup generator at a residential property in the center of the subdivision, sized to provide emergency power not just for that home, but also for the siren system. The city would pay for the additional capacity and the connection work. The homeowner would agree to maintain the generator and allow city access for inspections. That homeowner was me, though I'd been mostly oblivious to the siren arrangement. I'd signed a bunch of paperwork during the installation, and there had been something about allowing utility access and maintaining the system for community benefit. But I'd thought it was standard stuff about not blocking easements or something. Looking back at my copies of the installation contract, there it was in Appendix C. Generator system includes municipal emergency alert infrastructure support as coordinated with Thornridge Emergency Services and Meadowbrook HOA. The contract had been signed by me, Doug Patterson as the installer, a city official, and Brenda Patterson as HOA president. She knew. She had known all along that my generator powered those sirens, and she'd spent the last month trying to force me to remove it. I forwarded everything to Marcus with a detailed email explaining the situation. He called me within 30 minutes. "This is incredible," he said, and I could hear him grinning through the phone. "She's trying to force you to remove critical emergency infrastructure. Infrastructure that she herself approved and signed off on. Can we use this?" "Oh, we can absolutely use this. In fact, I think it's time to go on offense. Let me make some calls." The following Tuesday, there was an emergency HOA board meeting. I wasn't sure why it had been called until I arrived and saw James Kowalski from Emergency Management and Fire Marshal Davis sitting in the front row. Marcus had come too, dressed in a sharp suit that meant business. Brenda looked confused and annoyed when she saw all of us. "This is a closed board meeting," she said. "We have executive session items to discuss." "Actually, you'll want to hear this," Marcus said smoothly. "It concerns the ongoing dispute about my client's generator system." "Your client?" Brenda's eyes narrowed. "Aaron, you brought a lawyer to a board meeting, given that you've been harassing him for weeks, filing false reports with government agencies, and attempting to force removal of critical infrastructure. Yes, he brought a lawyer." James Kowalski stood up. "Mrs. Patterson, I'm with Thornridge Emergency Management. I need to discuss the tornado warning sirens in this subdivision." "What about them?" "They're powered by Aaron Young's backup generator, the same generator you've been trying to force him to remove. The color drained from Brenda's face. Around her, the other board members looked confused. "What are you talking about?" Linda Martinez asked. "The Sirens run on battery backup." "They used to," James said. "But in 2022, the HOA approved an upgrade to connect them to a more reliable power source. Mr. Young's generator." Mrs. Patterson signed the approval documents herself. He laid out copies of the contracts and approvals on the table. Linda, Paul, and Janet crowded around to read them. Tom Hendricks looked at Brenda with dawning comprehension. "You knew about this," Linda said. "You knew his generator powered the Sirens and you still tried to make him remove it." "That arrangement was made years ago. Things change. We can find another solution." "What solution?" Fire Marshal Davis spoke up for the first time. "Those Sirens need reliable backup power. Mr. Young's generator provides exactly that. It's the best setup I've seen in any subdivision in Thornridge. Trying to remove it would compromise public safety and potentially violate several city ordinances about maintaining emergency alert systems," James added. "Not to mention the liability issues if someone gets hurt because the Sirens failed during a tornado warning." Brenda was trapped and she knew it. Her face cycled through several shades of red before she found her voice. "This is all a misunderstanding. I wasn't trying to remove critical infrastructure. I had safety concerns about fuel storage, that's all. Safety concerns that the fire marshal has repeatedly addressed and dismissed," Marcus said. "Meanwhile, you filed false reports with environmental services, sent harassing violation notices, and attempted to abuse your position to force Mr. Young to remove a legally installed, properly permitted system." "I did no such thing." Marcus pulled out a folder. "I have documentation of every violation notice you sent, all of them unfounded. I have the false environmental complaint you filed, traced to the HOA email address. I have testimony from county inspectors stating there were no violations found. This is a clear pattern of harassment." "How dare you, Brenda, shut up." Linda Martinez's voice cut through the room. Everyone stared at her. She was normally the quiet one, the numbers person who stayed out of drama. But right now, she looked furious. "I've been treasurer on this board for 4 years. I've watched you bully people, make up rules, and abuse your authority. But this crosses every line. You endangered the whole community because of a personal grudge. It's not a personal grudge." You were trying to get revenge on someone who stood up to you," Paul Chen interrupted. "That's what this has always been about. Control." Tom Hendricks stayed silent, but he wouldn't meet Brenda's eyes. James Kowalski cleared his throat. "I need to make something very clear. The city has a legal agreement regarding that generator and those Sirens. If the HOA interferes with that agreement, there will be consequences. The generator stays. End of discussion." "Furthermore," Fire Marshal Davis added, "any future attempts to remove or disable that system without proper approvals will be treated as tampering with emergency equipment. That's a criminal offense." Brenda's mouth opened and closed like a fish. She'd gone from HOA dictator to cornered animal in the space of 10 minutes. "I move to officially recognize Aaron Young's generator system as approved community infrastructure, and to prohibit any future attempts to remove it or harass Mr. Young about it," Linda said. "Second," Paul said immediately. "All in favor?" Linda looked around the table. "Aye," Paul said. "Aye," Janet said. Even Tom Hendricks managed a weak "aye." Linda turned to Brenda. "That's 4 votes. The motion passes with or without your vote, but for the record, how do you vote?" Brenda looked at her fellow board members with pure hatred. "Abstain. Motion passes. Let the record show that, as of today, May 15th, Aaron Young's backup generator system is officially recognized as critical infrastructure, supporting both his residents and the subdivision's emergency alert system. All previous violation notices related to the generator are hereby rescinded and expunged from HOA records. Marcus smiled. My client appreciates the board's wisdom in this matter. However, there's still the issue of the harassment that's already occurred. The false reports, the baseless violation notices, the defamatory community emails. What do you want? Brenda snapped. An official apology in writing sent to Mr. Young and distributed to the entire community, correcting the false information you spread. A commitment that there will be no retaliation of any kind, and my client's legal fees covered by the HOA. Absolutely not, or, Marcus continued calmly, we file a lawsuit for harassment, defamation, and abuse of authority. Given the documented evidence and the fact that you attempted to remove emergency infrastructure, I like our chances in court. Of course, that would also likely result in personal liability for you, Brenda, since you acted beyond the scope of your authority. The room went silent. Linda looked at the other board members. I move we accept those terms. Second, Paul said, all in favor. 4 ayes. Even Tom voted yes this time. Motion passes. Brenda, you'll draft that apology and submit it to me for review before it goes out. And we'll pay Mr. Young's reasonable legal fees from the HOA budget. Brenda stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. Fine. You all deserve each other. I'm done. She grabbed her papers and stormed out of the community center. In the silence that followed her exit, Linda rubbed her temples. Well, that was long overdue. I apologize, Aaron. We should have reined her in months ago. Years ago, Paul muttered. I looked at Marcus, who gave me a small nod. I appreciate the board's action tonight, I said. I never wanted any of this. I just wanted to maintain my backup power system in peace. And you should be able to, Janet said. For what it's worth, during the ice storm last winter, you probably saved my mom's life. She lives 2 streets over, and her oxygen concentrator needs power. You kept it running for 3 days. I never properly thanked you for that. Several other residents who'd stayed for the meeting murmured similar stories. The tide of public opinion was shifting back in my favor. Fire Marshal Davis approached me as people started filing out. I meant what I said in there. Your setup is exemplary. You've done everything right, maintained it properly, and you've helped your neighbors during emergencies. Don't let bureaucrats and busybodies make you doubt that. Thank you. That means a lot. James Kowalski gave me his card. I'm going to send a tech out next week to verify all the connections and make sure we have updated documentation. But between you and me, I'm glad this is resolved. The city needs more citizens who take emergency preparedness seriously. Marcus and I walked out to the parking lot together. That went better than I expected, he said. I thought we'd have to fight harder. I think the other board members were looking for an excuse to put her in her place. We just gave them the ammunition. Well, expect that written apology within a few days. And an invoice for my services, though the HOA will be paying it. Marcus, I can't thank you enough. Just doing my job, but Aaron, if she tries anything else, anything at all, you call me immediately. Bullies like Brenda don't always know when to quit. He was right to warn me. 2 days later, I got a call from Doug Patterson, Brenda's ex-husband and the contractor who'd installed my generator. Aaron, it's Doug, you got a minute? Sure, what's up? I heard about what happened at the board meeting, the thing with the sirens. Yeah, that was quite a revelation. He sighed. I should have told you more clearly when I did the installation. The city project and your generator were bundled together, and Brenda was handling the coordination with the HOA. I assumed she'd explained everything. She didn't, though I'm betting she understood it perfectly. Oh, she did. We argued about it, actually, back when we were still married. She thought it was too complicated, wanted the city to install a separate system just for the sirens, but the city didn't have the budget for that. Using your generator with the extra capacity we built in was cost-effective and more reliable than stand-alone batteries. Why are you telling me this now? Because I want you to know what she's planning next. We're divorced, but we have a daughter together, so I still hear things. Brenda is talking about trying to get you removed from the subdivision. Not your generator, you. She wants to find some way to force you to sell and move. I felt cold. Can she do that? Probably not legally. But she can make your life hell trying. Constant violation notices, harassment, maybe even assessment increases targeted at your property. She's done it before to people who crossed her. That's insane. Yeah, well, there's a reason we're divorced. Look, I'm giving you a heads up. Document everything, keep your lawyer on speed dial, and watch your back. Brenda doesn't forgive and she doesn't forget. After we hung up, I filled Sarah in on the conversation. She looked worried. Maybe we should just move, she said. Is it worth all this stress? We love this house. Emma's preschool is 5 minutes away. Your job, my job, our friends are all here. Why should we leave because one person is on a power trip? Because that one person is making our lives miserable. She's trying to, but we have the law on our side now. The board backed us up. We have documentation and witnesses and support from the fire marshal and emergency management. If she comes after us again, we'll fight back. Sarah didn't look convinced, but she nodded. Okay, but if this gets worse, we're seriously considering our options. The written apology came 3 days later. It was perfunctory and clearly written through gritted teeth, but it covered all the points Marcus had demanded. Brenda acknowledged that she'd been mistaken about the generator system, confirmed that all violation notices had been rescinded, and apologized for any inconvenience or distress caused to me and my family. The apology went out to the entire Meadowbrook subdivision mailing list. Within hours, I started getting supportive emails and texts from neighbors. Several people I barely knew reached out to say they were glad the situation was resolved and that they'd never believed the generator was a problem. But there was also a minority of residents who seemed to side with Brenda. One email accused me of destroying community harmony and attacking a dedicated volunteer. Another suggested I was hiding behind technicalities to avoid legitimate safety concerns. You can't please everyone, I guess. Most people were supportive or at least neutral, and that was enough. For about 2 weeks, things were quiet. I maintained my generator, went to work, spent time with my family, and tried to put the whole drama behind me. Then, tornado season hit Thornridge with a vengeance. On June 3rd, a severe weather system rolled through Colorado. The forecast called for possible tornado development in the afternoon and evening. I checked my generator that morning, topped off the fuel tank, and made sure everything was ready to go. The first tornado warning came at 4 p.m. The sirens blared to life, that distinctive rising and falling wail that makes your blood run cold. Sarah grabbed Emma, and we all headed to our basement shelter. I monitored the weather on my phone, watching the radar as a rotation developed southwest of Thornridge. The tornado touched down about 6 miles away, an EF1 that tore up some farmland and damaged a barn but thankfully didn't hit any homes. The warning expired after 30 minutes, and we emerged from the basement to find everything intact, but the power was out. Lightning had hit a transformer station somewhere, knocking out electricity to most of eastern Thornridge. My generator kicked on automatically within seconds, just as it was designed to do. I went outside to check the system. Everything was running smoothly. The house had power, The refrigerator was humming, and the tornado sirens, though silent now, were ready to go if another warning was issued. Rick Morales came over about an hour later, carrying an extension cord. "Any chance I can borrow some power? My sump pump's not working, and I'm worried about my basement flooding if this rain keeps up." "Of course. Let me help you run the cord." Over the next few hours, 3 more neighbors came by asking for help. I ran extension cords to 2 houses and let another neighbor charge their phone and medical equipment in my garage. It was what neighbors did during emergencies. The power stayed out for 18 hours. During that time, 2 more tornado warnings were issued for surrounding areas. Each time, the sirens in our subdivision activated perfectly, alerting residents to take shelter. Those sirens, powered by my generator, might have saved lives. When power was finally restored the next afternoon, I disconnected all the extension cords and helped my neighbors get back to normal. Several of them thanked me profusely. Rick shook my hand and said, "I don't know what we'd do without you and that generator. Brenda was an idiot for trying to get rid of it." That evening, I got an unexpected knock on my door. It was Linda Martinez, the HOA treasurer. "Hi, Aaron. Do you have a few minutes?" "Sure, come in." We sat in the living room and she got right to the point. "I want you to know that the board is removing Brenda as president." "Well, she's actually removing herself, but we're encouraging it strongly." "What happened?" "A lot of things. The situation with you was the final straw, but there have been problems for months. Unexplained expenses, questionable vendor contracts, board meetings called without proper notice. I've been going through the books more carefully, and there are some concerning patterns." "Like what?" "Like the fact that we've paid Brenda's nephew's solar company almost $60,000 in consulting fees over the past year." "For what consulting?" "I have no idea. There's no documentation, no deliverables, nothing. Just invoices that were approved by Brenda and rubber stamped by Tom." "That sounds like embezzlement." "It might be. I've reported it to our HOA attorney and they're conducting an investigation. But regardless, Brenda is done. She's going to resign at the next board meeting, and if she doesn't, we have the votes to remove her." "Who's going to replace her?" "We haven't decided yet. Probably me, at least temporarily, but I wanted you to know that things are changing. The board should serve the community, not the president's personal agenda. That's going to be our focus going forward." "I appreciate you telling me. And Aaron, thank you for keeping those sirens running yesterday. My sister lives in the newer section of town, and their sirens didn't work because of the power outage. She didn't know about the second tornado warning until it was almost too late. Our neighborhood was safer because of your generator." After Linda left, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. Maybe this nightmare was finally over. The next HOA board meeting was packed. Word had spread about Brenda's resignation and the financial investigation. I attended with Sarah, curious to see how it would all play out. Brenda wasn't there. Linda Martinez chaired the meeting and wasted no time getting to business. Item 1 on tonight's agenda: the resignation of Brenda Patterson as HOA president. Mrs. Patterson submitted her resignation letter this afternoon, effective immediately. The letter is available for review. Does anyone have questions? Tom Hendricks raised his hand. Will she be attending future meetings? Mrs. Patterson has stated that she's stepping away from all HOA involvement. Whether she attends meetings as a resident is her choice, but she'll have no official role. Good, someone muttered from the audience. Linda continued. Item 2. The board has engaged a forensic accountant to review HOA finances for the past 2 years. There appear to be irregularities in how some contracts were awarded and some expenses were approved. The accountant will complete their review within 30 days and present findings to the board. If any illegal activity is discovered, we'll refer the matter to law enforcement." The audience murmured. This was bigger than anyone had expected. Paul Chen spoke up. "For transparency, I want to note that I've reviewed all board meeting minutes for the past 2 years. There are multiple instances where expenses were approved without proper documentation or discussion. The board, myself included, failed in our oversight duties. I apologize to the community for that. We all share responsibility," Linda said, "but we're committed to fixing it. Going forward, all expenses over $1,000 will require detailed documentation and majority board approval with recorded votes. No more blank checks." She looked around the room. Item 3. Appointing a new HOA president. I've been nominated and I'll serve if the board approves, but I want to make something clear. I don't want this to be a one-person show. The board should operate as a team with input from residents. We work for you, not the other way around. Janet Wheeler raised her hand. "I nominate Linda Martinez for HOA president." "Second," Paul said. The vote was unanimous. Linda was the new president. The meeting continued with more routine business, but the atmosphere was completely different from previous meetings. There was actual discussion, debate, questions from residents that were answered respectfully. This was what an HOA board should be. Afterward, several people came up to me to chat. The woman who'd spoken up at the previous meeting, the one who lived 3 houses down, introduced herself properly as Rachel Summers. "I just wanted to say I'm glad you didn't back down," she said. "Brenda needed to be stopped, but most people were too afraid of retaliation. You stood up for yourself and ended up helping the whole community." "I just wanted to keep my generator," I said. "Yeah, but in doing that, you exposed how corrupt things had become. That takes guts." Over the next few weeks, the forensic accountant's report came back. It was worse than anyone had anticipated. Brenda had been funneling HOA money to her nephew's solar company, her brother's landscaping business, and several other family connections. In total, nearly $90,000 in questionable expenses over 2 years. The HOA board voted unanimously to refer the matter to the Thornridge Police Department. Within days, detectives were interviewing board members, reviewing financial records, and building a case. I was interviewed too, since the detective wanted to understand the full context of what had been happening. I explained the situation with my generator, the harassment, the false reports, all of it. The detective took detailed notes. "This helps establish motive and pattern of behavior," he said. She was willing to abuse her authority in multiple ways. "The financial stuff is the crime we can prosecute, but your testimony shows it was part of a larger pattern." What happens now? We finish the investigation, present it to the DA, and they decide whether to file charges. Given the amount of money involved and the abuse of a fiduciary position, I'd say charges are likely. This isn't petty theft. This is felony embezzlement. It took 3 months. 3 months of investigation, grand jury proceedings, and legal maneuvering. But in early September, Brenda Patterson was arrested and charged with embezzlement, fraud, and abuse of authority. Her nephew was charged as an accomplice for his role in the solar company scheme. The local news covered it. "Former HOA president arrested in embezzlement scheme," read the headline in the Thornridge Gazette. The article detailed how Brenda had used her position to enrich herself and her family, and mentioned that the scheme had been uncovered after an unrelated dispute about a resident's backup generator. I didn't talk to reporters. I'd had enough of being in the spotlight, but the story spread through the neighborhood quickly. Brenda became a pariah. Her house went up for sale within a week of her arrest. The legal system moved slowly, but eventually, Brenda took a plea deal. Rather than face trial, she pleaded guilty to reduced charges in exchange for full restitution to the HOA and 2 years of probation. Her nephew got a similar deal. The HOA got its money back, minus legal fees. Linda Martinez proved to be an excellent president, running the board with transparency and fairness. Several policies were implemented to prevent future abuse. Term limits for board positions, mandatory financial audits, required disclosure of conflicts of interest. My generator continued to hum along, maintained and inspected, ready for the next emergency. It powered my house through 2 more storms that first year. It kept the tornado sirens running. It helped neighbors when they needed it. One evening in October, almost 6 months after the whole ordeal began, I was doing my weekly generator check when Rick came over with 2 beers. "Thought you might want one of these," he said, handing me a bottle. "Thanks." We stood there in comfortable silence for a moment, listening to the generator's steady rumble during its weekly test cycle. "You know what's funny?" Rick said. "Brenda tried so hard to get rid of this thing, and in the end, it's the reason she got caught. If she just left you alone, we never would have scrutinized the board's activities. She'd probably still be president, still skimming money. I've thought about that. If she'd ignored me, or if I'd just backed down, she'd have gotten away with it. But you didn't back down. You fought for what was right. That matters." We clinked bottles and drank to that. The generator shut off as its test cycle completed. Everything was green, all systems normal. I closed up the housing and made a note in my maintenance log. Another week, another successful check. Sarah called from the back door. "Dinner's ready, coming." I waved to Rick and headed inside, where my wife and daughter were waiting. The house was warm and bright, powered by the electrical grid that had been restored long ago. But I knew, without a doubt, that when the next storm came, when the power inevitably went out again, my generator would be ready. The sirens would sound when needed. The neighborhood would be safe. And Brenda Patterson would be nothing but an unpleasant memory. A cautionary tale about what happens when someone mistakes authority for power and forgets that they're supposed to serve the community, not rule it. Linda stopped by a few days later with an interesting proposal. "The board has been discussing something, and we wanted to get your input first. Given that your generator powers the emergency sirens, we think the HOA should contribute to its maintenance costs. It's not fair for you to bear the full expense of maintaining community infrastructure." I hadn't really thought about it, I admitted. The maintenance isn't that expensive, and I'd be running the generator anyway for my house. Still, it's the principle. We checked with our attorney, and the city contract actually includes a provision for the HOA to compensate the property owner for maintenance and fuel costs related to the siren system. Brenda never implemented it, probably because she didn't want to acknowledge the arrangement existed. "How much are we talking about?" "About $300 a month to cover your proportional fuel costs and maintenance. It's already budgeted in the city contract. The money just hasn't been flowing through to you. That's generous. It's fair. And Aaron, there's something else. We want to add a clause to the HOA covenants explicitly protecting critical infrastructure like your generator. No future board should be able to do what Brenda tried to do. Would you be okay with that?" "Absolutely. That would give me real peace of mind." The covenant amendment was drafted by the HOA attorney, circulated to all residents for comment, and put to a vote at the annual meeting in November. It passed with 92% approval. The Meadowbrook HOA now had specific protections for emergency preparedness equipment, requiring any concerns to go through proper channels with documentation and legitimate safety justifications. My generator became something of a neighborhood landmark. When new residents moved in, they'd often hear about Aaron's generator that powers the Sirens as part of the welcome tour. Some people thought it was cool, others didn't really care, but everyone understood it was important. The following spring brought another severe weather outbreak. This time, a tornado touched down closer to Thornridge, an EF3 that devastated parts of a neighboring town. The sirens in our subdivision worked perfectly, giving residents crucial warning time. Nobody in Meadowbrook was hurt, though several homes on the western edge suffered minor damage from straight-line winds. In the aftermath, James Kowalski from Emergency Management gave a press conference praising Thornridge's emergency alert system. He specifically mentioned the Meadowbrook subdivision setup as a model for other communities. Having redundant, reliable backup power for emergency sirens is critical, he said. The Meadowbrook model, where a properly maintained residential generator provides backup power under a formal agreement, has proven incredibly effective. Other subdivisions are now looking to implement similar systems. I watched the press conference on TV and shook my head in amazement. A year ago, I'd been fighting just to keep my generator. Now it was being held up as a model for emergency preparedness. My phone rang. It was Marcus Green, my attorney. "Did you see the news?" he asked. "Just watching it now." You should consider consulting with other HOAs that want to set up similar systems. You've got real expertise now, not just in the technical side, but in navigating the politics and legal issues. "I'm not sure I want to get into the HOA consulting business," I said. "Think about it. You could help other people avoid what you went through. Make sure these systems are set up right from the beginning, with proper agreements and protections in place. There's value in that." He had a point. Over the next few months, I did end up talking to 3 other subdivision HOAs in the Thornridge area about backup power for their emergency sirens. I shared my installation specs, explained the legal agreements, and walked them through the maintenance requirements. 2 of them ended up implementing similar systems. It was satisfying in a way I hadn't expected. What had started as a nightmare had turned into something positive, not just for me but for the broader community. Emma started kindergarten that fall. On the first day of school, I walked her to the bus stop with Sarah. Another parent there, someone I'd seen around but never really talked to, struck up a conversation. "You're Aaron Young, right? The generator guy," I smiled. "Yeah, that's me. I just wanted to say thank you. My mom uses a CPAP machine for sleep apnea. During that big storm last year, your generator kept the power running long enough for her to get through the night safely. I know you were helping several neighbors, but she specifically asked me to thank you if I ever met you. I'm glad I could help." "You did more than help. You probably saved lives. Those sirens, your generator keeping them running, that's serious stuff. So thank you." After the bus pulled away and I walked home with Sarah, she squeezed my hand. "See," she said. "I know it was awful dealing with Brenda, but look at the good that came from it. You stood your ground and now the whole community is better for it." "I guess so. Though I could have done without the stress. Maybe. But you can't choose how things happen. You can only choose how you respond. And you responded by doing the right thing, even when it was hard. That's what matters." We got home and I did my usual morning check of the generator. Everything was perfect. Fuel levels good, all systems green, maintenance log up to date. Just another day in Thornridge, Colorado, where a backup generator had become a symbol of community resilience and the importance of standing up to bullies, even when they have official titles. The final chapter of the Brenda saga came almost a year after her arrest. Her probation officer contacted me to say that Brenda had requested to make a personal apology as part of her restitution requirements. I could decline if I wanted to. I thought about it for a long time. Part of me wanted nothing to do with her ever again, but another part was curious. I agreed to meet her at a neutral location, a coffee shop downtown with the probation officer present. Brenda looked different, smaller somehow, less confident. The imperious HOA president was gone, replaced by a middle-aged woman who'd lost everything because of her own greed and pride. "Thank you for meeting me," she said quietly. "I know you didn't have to." "No, I didn't," she took a breath. "I owe you an apology, a real one, not the legal document I was forced to sign. What I did to you was wrong. I harassed you, filed false reports, tried to force you to remove something you had every right to have. And I did it because I was angry that you stood up to me. That's pathetic. I didn't say anything, just waited. I told myself I was protecting the community," she continued. "That I knew what was best. But really, I just liked being in control. I liked having power over people, and when you challenged that, I couldn't handle it. So I escalated and escalated until I destroyed myself. You did more than that. You stole from the community. You betrayed people's trust. I know. I'll be paying for it for the rest of my life. Financially, yes, but also in terms of reputation and relationships. My daughter barely speaks to me. My ex-husband won't even be in the same room. I have no friends left in Thornridge. Is that what you wanted me to say? That I forgive you?" "No, I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I understand what I did wrong. And that your generator, the thing I tried so hard to get rid of, it saved my neighbor's life during that tornado last year. She sheltered in place because the Sirens gave her enough warning. If you'd removed it like I wanted, those Sirens wouldn't have worked. People might have died, including people I cared about." She stood up. "That's all I wanted to say. Thank you for listening." She left before I could respond. The probation officer nodded at me and followed her out. I sat there for a while, processing. Did I forgive Brenda? I wasn't sure, but I understood her a little better, and maybe that was enough. Sarah asked me about it that evening. "How did it go?" She apologized. I think she meant it. "You feel better, not worse at least." "It's closure, I guess. The whole thing is finally over. But of course, life isn't that neat." A few months later, I got a letter from Brenda's attorney. She was suing the HOA for wrongful termination and reputational damage. Apparently, she believed the board had overreacted and that she deserved compensation. The lawsuit was absurd and quickly dismissed. Brenda had pleaded guilty to embezzlement. There was no wrongful termination. But it showed that some people never learn. Even after losing everything, she was still fighting, still trying to blame others for her own choices. Linda called me after the lawsuit was dismissed. "I thought you should know. Brenda's moving out of state, Arizona, I think. Her house finally sold. Good riddance." Agreed. "But Aaron, I want you to know something. What you did standing up to her, it changed this community. People aren't afraid to speak up anymore. The board actually listens to residents now. We're not perfect, but we're better. A lot better. And that's partly because you refuse to be bullied." "I just wanted to keep my generator," I said, which was true but also didn't capture the full truth. I wanted to keep my generator, yes, but I'd also wanted to prove that ordinary people could stand up to petty tyrants and win. That documentation and facts mattered. That doing the right thing, even when it was hard, was worth it. Years passed. Emma grew up. The generator kept running, maintained and inspected, ready for every emergency. I helped more neighbors during power outages. I consulted with other communities about emergency preparedness. The Meadowbrook HOA continued to function smoothly under Linda's leadership, and then under her successors, as she eventually termed out. The backup generator that had nearly been taken away became a permanent fixture of the neighborhood, so integrated into daily life that new residents hardly noticed it. But older residents remembered. They remembered the storms, the sirens, the battles with an out-of-control HOA board. They remembered that one man's refusal to back down had exposed corruption and improved their community. And every time those tornado sirens wailed across Thornridge, warning people to take shelter, my generator kicked into action, providing the power that might save lives. That was worth fighting for. That was worth all the stress and drama and confrontation. Standing in my backyard on a clear Colorado evening, watching the sun set over the mountains, I felt genuinely grateful for how things had turned out. The generator hummed quietly behind me, running its weekly test cycle. Everything was green. Everything was ready. And that was exactly how it should be.